Dear ladies and gentlemen, I wish to begin with this session, and it's my pleasure to start with a session on monitoring and evaluation. My name is Jože Hren, and I will be chairing this session. I believe we all agree that both monitoring and evaluation are essential components of any comprehensive and reliable policy. The lack of data, particularly on the rapidly changing nature and the extent of drug use, are matters of great concern to all policy and decision makers around the world. We should add here also poor data on the availability and accessibility and also cultural appropriateness of different drug demand reduction activities and measures. Information and knowledge sharing are therefore necessary elements in increasing scientifically based actions. I'm convinced that all three speakers, experts, will give us their contribution to this goal. Before I present our first speaker, let me just repeat technical instructions. We will have a discussion after all three speakers end with their papers. So at the end, we'll have a time for debate. I must apologize our first speaker, Mr. Björn Hibel, who was not able to come. Instead of him, Dr. Janusz Sierosławski will present his presentation. I will say a few words about Dr. Sierosławski. He's a researcher, sociologist, and for 33 years employed at the Institute of Psychiatry and Neurology in Warsaw, where he conducted many researches on epidemiology in the area of alcohol and drug problem. He was involved in many international research projects and drug policy implementation practices. He's also Polish permanent correspondent to the Pompidou Group and Polish expert for national focal point for EMCDDA. And he was trainer in numerous initiatives organized by EMCDDA, UNODC, WHO, and Pompidou Group. Janusz, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Okay, as Joseph said, I will have two presentations. The first one is the presentation of the Björn Hibel, who is the coordinator of the biggest in Europe and I think world's largest school survey on substance use called ESPAD. But I see that the first is my presentation on the screen, so we can change the order. So I will start with my presentation, and I will see. I will present the ESPAD as a second one. So before the ESPAD presentation, some our Polish experiences in evaluation of the drug policy. What is evaluation? This magic word which is very frequently used by the policy makers, by the researchers, by the practitioners. The evaluation could be considered as a fundamental requirement for effectiveness and rationality of the drug policy. Why? Because we need to know how our projects are implemented, how the policy is implemented. We also need to know what are the outcomes of our action, and also what is the contribution of our action to the change of the situation. So we have three types of the evaluation. Process evaluation, that means this assessment of the quality and extent of the action. Outcome evaluation, that means the answer for the question how the situation changed. And then the impact evaluation, the most interesting and in the same time the most controversial, most problematic type of evaluation. That means the question to which extent our action really contribute to the changes of the situation, to the changes of the outcome. And there are a lot of methodological problems related to all three types of the evaluation. So always the results should be taken with a lot of limitation, restriction, reservations. And what are the relationships between the evaluation and monitoring? The monitoring provides data for evaluation. Evaluation could be considered to be assessment on the basis of this data collected in the scope of the monitoring. And I would like to show some Polish experiences of outcome evaluation. That means to show how the situation changed in the period of last 20 years, and try to formulate at least some hypotheses how the policy influence the drug situation. And the main data sources which are based for this evaluation attempts, they are school surveys, population surveys, national statistical data, from the various institutions which respond to the drug problem, like law enforcement, treatment, and they are also the results of the cohort mortality studies among drug addicts. And firstly, some words about the Polish drug policy. And in the 80s, in the 90s, in Poland, the prevention activities was mostly focused on the youth, and consist of the lectures given by the police or by the drug treatment therapist or former drug addicts. And the goal of these activities was to convince young people to maintain abstinence, and mostly by scaring them. Other type of the activities, they were the organization of the leisure time alternatives, and also mostly focus on the sport activities, and there are also some incidental actions, but always focus on the youth, and mostly on the youth who didn't yet use the drugs. And there were very limited impact of those prevention action on the behavior of youth. And there was, in the end of the previous century, the call for the more effective strategies. A new approach which was developed since the beginning of this century, or at least half of the previous decades, was the attempts to implement theory-driven prevention and evidence-based practice, like action focused on the risk and protective factors, differentiated action according to the target groups, the long-term activities designed as a program instead of the incidental action, and the most interesting, I think, and also the most powerful, the local community-based approach to the prevention. And what are the results of this action? Here on the slide you can see the lifetime prevalence of the drug use among 15, 16 years old students. This data came from the SPAT, about which I will talk later on. And you can see that the upper line illustrated the percent of the lifetime cannabis users go up. It was some fluctuation into 2007, but the trend is increasing. When we look at the other lines, which illustrate the other prevalence of the other drug use, we can see that it was the increase till 99 and then the decreasing trend. So we can formulate the hypothesis that at least when our other than cannabis drug into consideration, we have the positive outcome. So we can formulate a hypothesis that the drug policy contributes at least to this decrease. When we look at the cannabis, we can see that we cannot say about the success. And this lifetime cannabis use we can see on the ground of the trend in other European countries. It is the benefits from the SPAT study. Then you can see between 2007 and 2011 increase in the Poland, and in the same time the stable trend in the other European countries. So we can say that in other European countries, they maybe manage better the cannabis problem than in Poland. It is still the hypothesis. But we cannot say that this increasing trend illustrate or are just the element of the common European trend. So therefore, I really would like to encourage you to contribute to international epidemiological project like SPAT study, because you can see much more about your situation. And this cannabis use we can see also not only using this SPAT data, but also the general population data and the number of offenses detected by the police, and you can see exactly the same trend. Some decrease in 2007, but the long trend is still increasing. And the next indicator from the SPAT study, the perceived risk related to cannabis use. They are the percentage of the students who answer great risk when they were asked about the risk related to cannabis use. And there are three indicators. The first one is related to the first attempt of cannabis use. That means somebody used cannabis once or twice in the lifetime, then the smoke cannabis occasionally, and then the smoke cannabis regularly. And you see that is in all indicators decreasing trend, and especially accelerated in 2011. So we can say that all this action, which was focused on convincing people that the cannabis use risk is very high, failed. So the youth have their own experiences. The youth looks at the situation in the different way. And then some word about the penal policy in Poland. Till half of the 90s and in the 80s and first half of the 90s, the illicit drug possession was not penalized in Poland. We have quite liberal policy, which was more focused on the prevention, on the treatment, but not on the repression measures. And on the basis of research findings, most of the European countries in that time have very liberalized their own policy, because in the most European countries in that time, the drug use, even the small amount for personal use, was penalized. And because this penalization policy was not effective, didn't lead to decrease of prevalence of drug use, reinforced health deprivation and social exclusion of drug users, and also was extremely expensive, most European countries liberalized the policy and just canceled this penalization of drug possession, small amount for personal use. In Poland, it was totally different or opposite trend. In 1997, we adopted the new law penalizing illicit drug possession, but with exception of small amount for personal use. In 2000, we amend this law, extended penalization to cover any possession, even small amount for personal use. So if a young person have even one joint and is catched by the police, can be put into prison. But in 2011, the probation measure was extended, so this policy was to some extent at least liberalized. Why? Because if you look at this slide, you can see the number of the drug-related offenses detected by the police, and you can see that after both changes of the legislation, the number of offenses dramatically increase. And what kind of offenses? Especially the drug possession and the drug provision or procuring. Not the drug selling, but if somebody shared the drugs or give to the other. And the other type of the offenses, this area which is yellow on the bottom of the slide is have the same. Yeah, this is not illustrate not increasing trend. So we can say that all these penal measures, in fact, create the new type of the criminality, the drug possession, or have impact on this part of criminality, which is really related to the drug use, not to the drug trafficking, smuggling, and so on. This part was not changed. And when we look at this drug-related offenses detected by the police and sentences by the court, we can see very increasing trend of these convicted cases, much quicker than the trend of the offenses detected by the police. They are indexed data, that means they are shown in the relation to the data from 1990. So you can see that till 2007, this bot line increased and this core data increased much quicker. And then we can see that this penal policy slightly changed. So the number of the offenses detected by the police slightly increased, but the number of the people convinced by the court slightly decreased. So that the practice could be said was before the changes of the legislation. And then we have the perceived drug availability, which could be the indicator of the availability of this drugs, so that it was expected that this new penal policy will reduce the availability. We can see that it is not the case, especially when we talk about the cannabis. The other drugs slightly reduced, but not the cannabis. And then 2 minutes. So maybe I will skip this part concerning the treatment. I will only show you these results about the mortality of the problem drug users. They are the findings of the cohort study. And what we can see here, we can see the standardized mortality ratio. That means the ratio which illustrates how bigger is the mortality among the drug addicts compared to the mortality in general population. And we can see that in 2000, among the total drug addicts, this mortality was 17 times higher than in general population. But when we take only opioid addicts, we can see that it was even 30 times higher than mortality in the population. And then we can see very decreasing trend, very rapid in the beginning of this century. And finally, in 2013, we have only 2 times higher mortality among drug addicts than among the general population. And it could be considered to be the effect of the treatment policy and harm reduction policy. So that is, I think, big achievement. And conclusion would be that drug use prevention is still not able to manage to reduce cannabis use, but other drugs use prevalence decrease, it is important. And penal policy produce criminality by penalization of drug possession and is not visible impact on drug availability. And the treatment and harm reduction, we can see the decreasing trend in mortality among drug addicts and also the incidence of HIV infection, which I didn't manage to show because of the time. And now the methodological problems of evaluation, which are related to the restriction and limitation of conclusion. So the alternative interpretation of the changes in the epidemiological indicators is always possible, so we cannot control all factors other than the drug policy. And we are not take these factors under strict control, so they are only hypotheses. And there are also a lot of problems with data validity, reliability, and comparability over time. Thank you for attention.
Thank you, Janusz, for your second presentation, which happened to be the first one. I would suggest now if we continue with the program. Our first speaker should be, as I said before, Mr. Björn Hibel, who was supposed to present us information about ESPAD study, which is the world's largest school survey on substance use. I hope his presentation is now available because it's going to be presented by Mr. Janusz Sierosławski.
Or maybe now we'll ask our colleague from Lithuania to present their presentation, and I will go to the end. That's depends on.
It would be logically, I think, continuation logic, because you have spoken about ESPAD as well. Yes.
Okay, this is already. Okay, so I would like now to say some words about the ESPAD study, the world's largest school survey on substance abuse. This presentation is prepared by Björn Hibel, who is the coordinator of the ESPAD study from the beginning. That means already 19 years, or even more, because the study started in 95. The content of the presentation will be why school survey, then the short presentation of the ESPAD, then some results of the ESPAD, and then some words about the participation of the Turkey in this exercise. Thirdly, why school survey? And the school survey is very important and useful tool to monitor the drug situation, because firstly it's very cost effective. The data collection is relatively cheap, especially if we compare to the general population survey. It's relatively easy to conduct, reach a large number of students in one setting. It's relatively easy to standardize, and also the sampling is to reach the representative sample is relatively easy. High response rate among students is also usually noted, and high validity of the data collected. That means the more honest answer than the other part of the surveys. They are the privileges related to the school survey. However, the SPAT or the school survey only includes students. That means not young people are enrolled as a whole. Only the people enroll at the school. So these young people who didn't go to school are eliminated. In some countries, sampling can be difficult according to the school system. The refusing school is a problem in a few countries in the western part of Europe now. But anyway, the SPAT or the school survey should be still important tool. And what is the SPAT as a school survey? The SPAT started in 1995 as an agreement of the researchers from 26 countries. 26 countries participated. It was initiated by the Center CAN from the Stockholm, but with the highest contribution of the Pompidou Group. So the Pompidou Group served as a platform to gather all these researchers interested in participation in this survey. And then in 1999 we have already 30 countries. In 2003, 35 countries, and this number of the countries increased over the time. And finally, in 2011, the last wave of the survey covered 39 countries, and hopefully around 40 countries will be in 2015. So it's so broad platform from comparison. On the map, you can see the area of Europe covered by the SPAT study. So it is, in fact, almost all a continent. Not only European Union, but also a lot of the countries outside of European Union. And some characteristic of the SPAT: the students that will become 16 years old during the year of the data collection are the target population. The nationally representative sample of classes is taken, and about 2,400 participating students in each country. More than 110,000 European students in 2011 participate in the study. So the sample is really, really huge. And the strategy is to standardize what is possible to reach the as much as possible comparable data. So that this under standardization is the target age group, the random sampling, master questionnaire, study leader protocol, data collection procedure. All these things are standardized, and also the time of data collection. Finally, the common database is created, and the common data cleaning procedure is applied. And all these things are described in the SPAT handbook, which is also available on the web page. And the purposes of the study is to have access to the comparable data on substance use among European students, including as many European countries as possible, and also to monitor the trend in the single countries, in the group of the countries, and also in the whole Europe. But the other purposes of the study is to serve as an alcohol and drug prevention among youth, including national policy and prevention activities, and providing data that can be used as a part of the evaluation of the European strategies and also the national strategies, and how it could be used I showed in the previous presentation. And all the reports from the ESPAD study are available for downloading at the ESPAD webpage, and they are, of course, free of charge. Then there was the Stockholm picture, because Björn Hibel is from Stockholm. And then the question, does a project like ESPAD have any impact on the drug policy, on the drug practice? And in 2012, the impact study was conducted amongst stakeholders. So the media interest was quite high, 61% interviewed the practitioners, policymakers, and researchers give such answer. Then interest among the politicians was even higher, 71%. And the ESPAD 2011 reports used in the public drug debate in various countries, it is closely to 90%. So now some ESPAD results. On this slide, you can see the lifetime use of marijuana or hashish by gender in the 19 countries which participate from the beginning till the end of the project, and had the all measurement points. And as it was seen before, it was the increasing trend till 2003, then the stabilization. And this is the average situation, but this situation is very differentiated in the countries. So in 11 countries, the marijuana use increase, in 6 countries decrease. So it contributes to this general average. There are also the results about the lifetime use of marijuana, and maybe it is not very readable, but you can see this huge discrepancy among countries. How big are the results in the Czech Republic, for example, which took the first place, and then in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is on the end of this ranking. And then the proportion of students having had 5 or more drinks on one occasion. It's indicator so-called binge drinking. And what we can see on this slide is very interesting changes according to the gender. So we can see that till 2007, the prevalence of binge drinking among girls increased much quicker than increase among boys. So this differences between boys and girls was just very, very reduced. And it could be interpreted as a changing of the position of the woman in the society, or the gender issue. You know, that's this cultural explanation of such trend. And then large differences between countries. You can see here some ranges. Cigarette use, for example, last 30 days. 33% for the all study, and then the differences between 43 and 10%, and even in the cannabis between 24 and 1%, or illicit drug other than cannabis from 16% to 2%. So these discrepancies are very, very big. So the analysis of the country situation on the ground of the other countries is very, very useful. And what happened now? We are planning the 2015 survey. It will be the regional seminars in October preparing this survey. So in March, April 2015, the data collection is foreseen. 15 August 2015, delivery of the national data set and country reports. November 2015, national data set will be ready. And finally, in the mid of 16, we will launch the new 2015 SPAT report, and we will see how the trends change over the last 4 years. And at the end, some two words about the Turkey in the SPAT. Turkey took part in SPAT in 95. The Istanbul was covered only, and in 2003, the 6 cities were covered. So you have the 2 measurement points. And it is also now discussion prior to the, there were the discussion prior to the other data collection, but finally it was not successful. So Turkey is welcome to back to the SPAT in the new wave, and you can obtain the data which will be comparable with the other European countries, but also in the data which you already collected in 2000 in previous 2 waves. So the data about the use of cigarettes, alcohol, cannabis, other illegal drugs, inhalants would be possible to obtain. So thank you for attention, and I really would like at the end to promote this SPAT in Turkey. Thank you.
Janusz, thank you for both presentations, for your about Polish drug policy, development of Polish drug policy, and for this general presentation about SPAT. Now I wish to invite Ms. Nijolė Goštautaitė-Mittum from Lithuania. She's a medical doctor, psychiatrist, and health psychologist. She's also a psychotherapist and advocate for public health, for public mental health in Lithuania. Her main interests are mental health care system and service development, patient rights, health education and advocacy, alcohol and tobacco control. She's a member of various Lithuanian medical associations and has a long experience, over 20 years of working experience in various areas. Ms. Goštautaitė, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you, Green Crescent organization, Turkish Green Crescent, for the possibility to be here in Istanbul. And the whole conference is focusing on very large political and drug policy issues. And I would like to address just a very small part of it, which is addiction treatment services for children. They are a very small part of overall interventions that have a proven efficacy. At the same time, they have a very long-term impact, since if a child becomes addicted at an early age, that addiction will probably follow him all his or her life. So I was trying to figure out what is the connection between Lithuania and Turkey, and how can we connect the idea of exchanging experience and sharing experience and learning from each other's experience when the size is so different. And I have kind of calculated that to make us feel better, that, and I didn't dare to compare with the whole Turkey population, so I just said that Istanbul population is only 6 times bigger than Lithuania as a country. At the same time, even though big is beautiful, still experiences, small experiments, smaller research can actually provide some guidance and ideas on how to do things different or better. So today I will talk about the findings of the study of the addiction services for the accessibility to the services for the children. And I would like to thank Lithuanian Drug, Tobacco and Alcohol Control Department, as well as State Mental Health Center, which provided large parts of the data. Today I will talk very briefly about consumption patterns of psychoactive substances among school children in Lithuania, a little bit about what data do we have on the treatment services provision, and the results of the accessibility study. This a little bit complex graph shows you what is a problem of consumption of psychoactive substances in Lithuania. And the interesting part is that on the horizontal axis, you have the grades from the 5th to the 12th grade. So you can see that consumption is very closely related to age. The closer school children get to the being adults, they accept the norms of the society that are prevalent. So their consumption of both legal and illegal substances is increasing. And as you see from this graph, still the main problem in Lithuania, from the drug use perspective, is alcohol. And nearly 83% of boys consume alcohol, and nearly 72% of girls consume alcohol. They would answer yes to the question about the consumption. This is very high, and if you see, compared with the illegal drugs, they increase much slower, and they also reflect the harm and the consumption pattern in the adult population, which is relatively low in Lithuania. Here also just to indicate that the trend is favorable. We can see that the alcohol consumption for the past 12 months, since 2004 to 2012, has decreased somewhat, quite substantially, and the same holds for the consumption over the past 30 days. So we see that the overall consumption in the society is very prevalent, just like in adult population, but at the same time, the immediate consumption, the acute consumption, and over the year, it is going down for both boys and girls, which is quite an encouraging trend. At the same time that we see that for the boys, regular consumption, which is a relatively low proportion of school children who do consume alcohol regularly, is actually again on the increase. It's about 13% right now, and we still have the data for the further years, and it is somewhat increasing. The same trend is a decrease for the girls. Here is to show also with what we deal, because only a small proportion of children end up with a hospital or the treatment services, and you see that there are the differences in services provided for children with alcohol intoxications when they're hospitalized. It has been increasing quite dramatically, 17 times in 6 years, and then it started rapidly to decrease. I would be glad to answer some questions, because this was also about the policy. It was not only about the treatment, but this decrease is also due to policy change. This is also to see the next biggest drug that is used in Lithuania is basically tobacco. And again, we see a reduction from 2004 to 2012, as you see from this graph. This is just to show the proportion of illicit drugs used. This is the children that answered that, yes, I have used an illicit drug once or twice in lifetime. And you see that that part is actually increasing. We have a long tradition of treatment services for the children, which are covered by the state. They are covered by the state health insurance. And over the past 20 years, there has been additional developments. We have service provision in both mental hospitals, also in specialized addiction centers with beds for children. We have outpatient facilities, and in every community, we have primary mental health centers, which also have addiction specialists among their staff. And that means that children, the parents, families, they can have a consultation immediately without prior contact with the GP. So that is on the primary level and easily accessible services. So I hope I have convinced you that we have a consumption problem in Lithuania, especially alcohol, somewhat of drugs. There are quite a number, about 10–13% of school children that are regular users of alcohol, and at the same time, services provided according to the Lithuanian health insurance data, they are negligible. This is not per 100,000. This is the actual absolute numbers of the service provision due to use of psychoactive substances and use of alcohol separately as well. So we see that the services provided to school children, they are basically non-existent. They are increasing somewhat, but 13 cases of treatment for alcohol use is very, very low. So we have looked at it in more detail, but still, even for cannabis use, even when we look at the different substances, these are all by ICD-10 classification, still you see it's a little bit irrelevant because nearly no cases of treatment for cocaine and a couple of for heroin, but no for tobacco, have been during 2008-2012 period. So here we have some little bit higher numbers for alcohol intoxication, which is coded differently. But still, as you see, the numbers are relatively small and decreasing. So the reason why we have made this assessment study for the accessibility, the idea was that the consumption is high, but service provision is very low. We did estimate that there should be a much higher number of children who would need the services due to highly prevalent consumption in the society. And yet it was not there. So we have designed a small study which covered nearly all of the cases that have received treatment services in Lithuania for the past couple of years. And we have designed a very practical survey that had 3 parts, and they were matching surveys for both a parent or a carer, a child, and a specialist who provided the service. So we could have matching answers to see basically if the understanding of accessibility of services is the same in all the stakeholder groups as well, like a child, a parent, and a specialist. So here you see a little bit, we have surveyed 46 children who received addiction services. also 46 parents or carers. It's interesting that half of the cases were from the so-called childcare homes, basically orphanages. So it also suddenly drawn our attention to that part, that even in the state children's homes, the prevalence of alcohol abuse and also drug problems were quite prevalent. I will go through some of the results just to have an idea, because as I said, this was the goal of the study was to really assess practically and to see how we can improve it. We have services historically for very long, and they are used. It's just that how to improve access to them and their results. So one of the interesting findings was that the reasons for contacting addiction services was quite clear-cut. Both parents and children, they did understand that the only reason they're coming to the mental health center or they're coming to addiction center is because they are using a drug. Because we thought that one of the access problems could be that they're mistakenly coming for, they're being sent because of the behavioral problems, because of school problems, maybe because of a mental disorder that is not diagnosed. At the same time, the specialists have drawn our attention very clearly that they do not see any children who come by themselves, that the main gateway is always a parent or a caretaker. So we always have to focus on that. So this was an interesting finding from the point of view, because even in our prevention or promotion policies, we quite rarely target parents because they are quite a difficult group to reach. Here is some information about the substances due to which the children had to get those services. And just as in the epidemiological data, it clearly reflects the pattern of consumption of drugs in the society. The main problem is alcohol and tobacco, and at the same time, out of illegal drugs is cannabis. What is also interesting that according to a SPAD study, Lithuania has quite high numbers of the adolescent use of anxiolytics and sedatives. Our government is still debating the data, by the way. We're trying to figure out why, because we're a little bit different from Poland. But this study also has shown that, yes, there is a significant proportion of children who do accept, and their parents, that they are using. But that does not show on the official statistics of the service provision. So another interesting finding was that even though the services that are provided and registered by the health insurance and paid for, actually there are more services provided, not in a clandestine way. These are regular service conditions. The problem is that they are not properly statistically filed. Regarding accessibility, our main and most interesting finding was that even though it takes a very long time to contact the service, we see that average was about 18 weeks since the person who is responsible for a child understands that there is a problem to the contact that is actually made. While after the contact is made, the service access is within 1 week. And there was a good agreement among children and parents that within 1 week from the contact, they have actually received the service. Another important finding that we found, and that will be also have included into our recommendations, is that we need to improve referral services, because what was shown by this study is that nearly none of the groups, such as school, such as GP, such as social services, have actually referred those children. Most of the children came either by the parents or the responsible adult, a carer from the care institution. So we do need a much more involvement of the GPs, of the schools, and of the systems that have been designed, at least theoretically, designed to take care of the health and welfare of the children. And also, just to give an example of the small outcome that we did not intend to have, is that what it has shown as well, that according to the both children, carers, and specialists, we see very high effectiveness of the interventions provided. So we see that basically 33% have concluded that the problem has been solved. They're not using alcohol or drugs anymore. And actually, more children have claimed that they have stopped using as an outcome of the intervention. And as we see, the accessibility satisfaction and accessibility ratings were so high that they were a little bit irrelevant. So we were more interested in the time from contact to actual delivery of the service, and we found that very acceptable. We see that different aspects of the service characteristics, they were also received very favorably, even though there was a little bit lower assessment for the effectiveness of the service in the other. So here I come to the conclusions, and our main ones is that we do need to improve referral system, especially work and train with the GPs and school teachers, and to reduce the stigma, because it seems that people who understand the problem, they're deliberating too long, because if we could cut this time between when I see my child having a problem and actually calling somebody, that would, at least in Lithuania, could cut the access to the service quite dramatically. So we have concluded that the services themselves are quite accessible, they are quite effective, and we're working hard now on publicizing this data and also working with the ways to reduce stigma and to address this referral problem. Just one more thing to remind, that this is just a very small part of any policy. Treatment services for the children is very small, but it does contribute to this a little bit complex graph, which shows alcoholic psychosis incidence. And these, all these references are to the major policy initiatives that were taken in Lithuania. And you see how it really cuts into psychosis numbers. If you have the correct policy, it really goes down fast. If you have the wrong policy that promotes alcohol consumption, you have dramatic increase. So we need all bits and parts to be coordinated to have a policy impact in what we do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Goštautaitė, for sharing with us accessibility challenges in delivering addiction services to children in Lithuania. Our last speaker is Mr. Bob Kaiser. I will say just a few words about him. Probably you all know him. But he studied medical law, and from 1999 to 2002, he was head of the drug policy division in the Netherlands. He was also Dutch representative to the Pompidou Group, and between 2004 and 2007, he was executive chairman of this group. In recent years, he started his engagement with the Trimbos Institute in the Netherlands, and in this capacity, he has been involved in many projects in Europe, North Africa, Russian Federation, also here in Turkey and Central Asia. Please, Bob Kaiser, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, thank you for inviting me here. I shall try to share with you some of my experiences as a policymaker, and I will try to put it in 15 minutes. Please give me a signal. And the subject of my introduction is, in fact, are my experiences with monitoring and evaluation as policy tools. When I started working at the ministry, I first started working with issues like general practitioners, mental health care, hospital care, etc. And later on, more or less by coincidence, I was nominated the head of the drug policy division, and that was in the 90s. I realized after a short time that this is a very fascinating working field, the drug issue. It's completely different from other health fields because the drug problems are constantly changing. Also the nature of drugs involved are changing. There are many sectors involved. It's not only health, but it's all the educational system, it's justice, it's customs, it's politics. It's highly a politicized issue. Many disciplines are needed for the disciplines. And last but not least, it was a very fast-moving working field. There's an ongoing development of new methods, good practices, etc. And I realized after some time, I said, well, what am I doing here as a policy maker? And the main challenge is in working, in fact, with three main sectors, elements, who are dependent on each other. On the other hand, they all have their own role to play. It's, first of all, it's politics, especially drugs is a highly politicized issue. Every politician has an idea or a judgment. He pretends to know everything about drugs. There are scientists involved who also have their own role to play. And last but not least is this vast working field of health practitioners, policemen, etc., etc. And the challenge is in identifying these three actors and try to let them communicate with each other. That's the main challenge of the policy maker. The main obstacles are that the collaboration between these sectors is often very problematic. To start with, it's always the differences between health and justice, but it's also the lack of communication between scientists, practitioners, etc. Politicians, I said it before, they have the tendency to say ad hoc what they think and what they want. They have little knowledge of the situation. You can't blame them because it's a very complicated working field. They tend to think top down and they're very often very emotional in their ideas. And science, I'm putting it just in a few wordings here, so don't blame me, but there's always the problem of money, and consequently there's always the problem of long-term programming of research project, and I must say they often, it's improving now, but and especially in the 90s, they had a tendency to speak from the ivory tower, to use very difficult language to try to explain very simple things. And practice, that's always, again, I said they have to do the work, but they have always lack of time and money and budget. They had no quality standards at that time. And they failed to give the right signals to politicians and scientists so that those people cannot reflect to their day-to-day problems. And if these three elements are not connected very well together, the danger is that drugs policies can become inefficient, inconsistent, and incredible to the population, and this can lead to a widening gap that we've seen that especially in the 90s, a widening gap between the citizen and the policymakers. And last but not least, the biggest danger is, and it has always been, in mixing up personal opinions and scientific facts. So a good policymaker, especially in the 90s, should start working in a policy cycle. We started in the Netherlands in the 90s with that. A cycle is a period of 2 years' time, 3 years' time, 5 years' time. That could be different from country to country. But it always starts with implementing the policy, then monitoring, what are the results, then evaluation, how could we interpret these facts. This is the input for innovation and research, and that could lead to a new policy cycle. And the policy tools, it's quite obvious, are of course developing of policy strategies, action plans, developing good coordination mechanisms, and monitoring and evaluation systems. and I said that before, monitoring and evaluation system are the input for research and innovation structures. And these are indispensable tools for a policymaker. Without that, he or she cannot develop a good drug policy. And this brings me to the role of the policymaker. I've stressed that before. That's first of all to raise awareness amongst these players about the fact that they are dependent on each other on the one hand. On the other hand, they have to separate their responsibilities. So improving communication and cooperation is the first task of the policymaker, and to improve the transfer of knowledge. Another thing, and I would like to give an example in a few minutes, is to create intellectual leeway. A good policymaker needs to have the courage to invest in new experimental developments. And on the whole, I think the main task is to manage the policy cycle. And last but not least, especially speaking here, is to make the connection between what's happening at the international field and encouraging your national experts to go to international bodies in order to exchange knowledge. So this is my point, in fact, my first remark about the role of the policymaker. It's not primarily a political function or a scientific function. A good policymaker is a manager in the first place. Let me end. Monitoring and evaluation are indispensable tools in this whole process. Let me share with you, I can spend that because it's obvious, monitoring is the basis for evaluation, and evaluation is the input for further development. But let me, because of the time, skip that and give you some examples and some of my personal experiences. I think you all know that, especially in the 90s, the Netherlands was one of the few countries that has legalized, or not legalized, but tolerated the sale of cannabis in small amounts. And there was a lot of criticism on the Netherlands. Apart from the cannabis issue, we have invested as one of the first countries in what we call harm reduction measures. We have set up needle exchange programs, methadone programs as one of the first countries. And we were highly criticized by Germany, France, Sweden, United States. In fact, almost everybody was against us. And this man you see here, it's Mr. Chirac, the president of France. He was one of the most outspoken people who criticized the Netherlands. And our government was very unhappy with this criticism because the Netherlands is heavily dependent on international trade and international relationships. So our government really got nervous by this criticism. At one time, to give you an example of the tone of this criticism, France was undertaking nuclear tests in the Pacific. They were testing an atomic bomb in the Pacific, which caused a lot of damage to the environment. And when he was criticized on this damage, he said, well, this atomic damage is nothing compared with the effects of a Dutch drug policy. I mean, that was the tone. It's no joke, it happened. So every time there was criticism, I was called by my minister, said, oh, we are so nervous, what should we do? Shall we give up our drug policy? Meaning, what is it worth? In fact, that was the question. And also in '96, because it went on for years, there was another attack by the French Senate on the Netherlands, claiming that the Netherlands was a narco state. I mean, comparable with Colombia and other countries. It was a neighboring country accusing us of that. And that was the point when my minister and the prime minister were at the brink of giving up our policy. But I was able to present a report produced by the University of Amsterdam. It says, Cannabis Policy in Germany, France, and the Netherlands. And this was a report produced by the University of Amsterdam in close collaboration with his French colleagues, some colleagues from Germany, colleagues from the United States. And this report, and we even sent a Dutch researcher to France to investigate the situation in France, describing the French situation, translated in Dutch and published it in this report. And everybody was very upset about this report because it made clear that the situation, especially in France and also in Germany as regards harm reduction, was much worse than the situation in the Netherlands. We also sent it immediately to the press, of course, and Parliament, so everybody was involved. And this was really a turning point in the debate, and also a turning point in the relationships with France. Because whether they liked it or not, these were good figures. And it was so good that the French offered money to translate this Dutch report in French again, because they didn't have a report in French about their own situation. And like I said, it completely changed the tone of the debate. And we succeeded in fact, defending our policy in this way, thanks to the presentation of data and first effort to compare these data with other countries. Another output of this crisis was the establishment of the National Drug Monitor, because our politicians got courage again to say, well, what are the French to accusing us of this devastating policy? Well, it isn't that bad at all. They were so fed up that especially my minister gave me the money to establish a National Drug Monitor, which is a very comprehensive system in which all the available data in the Netherlands are collected into this National Drug Monitor. They publish a report every year. And the whole idea is to combine all the available data, including alcohol, tobacco, including justice figures, everything we know about the drug situation, or let's say abuse, substance abuse situation, are collected in this report. And from the 90s on till it's still published every year, we can give input to the EMCDDA. We published a report to Parliament. And in fact, it's the basis for an ongoing debate in the Netherlands about drug policy. You see here some examples of all the subjects that are taken on board in this monitor. You see everything we know. It's methadone registration, it's addict care registration, school surveys, mental health care, infectious diseases, the pill market. I will spend a few words on that too. So the lesson here is that, in fact, thanks to Mr. Chirac, we have now an excellent monitoring system in the Netherlands. And thanks to this monitoring system and collection of data, we have succeeded in maintaining the main lines of our policy. And the second remark, if I have still time, Mr. Chairman, that's more or less in line with the previous example, is that my recommendation to you is to invest in international cooperation, especially amongst scientists, because we could produce this report I've just mentioned because we had the knowledge, we had the experience, we had the networking, because we have funded researchers in Amsterdam and Rotterdam to do ongoing work on drug research. So it's not an ad hoc situation, but you have to allow them to build up experience, etc. And these researchers have delivered input to the Pompidou Group, together with some other researchers, I think it were some people from the UK, in developing the core indicators, the drug indicators, like drug use, problematic use, demand, treatment demand, mortality. These indicators were developed by the Pompidou Group with a substantial input of Dutch researchers. Once developed, the EMCDDA took over these indicators. In fact, the work they're doing now, it's excellent work, by the way, is based upon the indicators developed by the Pompidou Group. And the Pompidou Group could do this because there was input from national researchers in this process. It didn't fall out of heaven, it was just a matter of investment. And the EMCDDA is delivering excellent report, I mentioned that, which are on its turn the input for the EU policies, strategies, action plan, and the national authorities are looking at these EU reports to develop their national policies. So this is how it works, and my main recommendation here is invest, let your researchers go to international body, encourage them to cooperate because it pays off. This is an example. I mentioned that the criticism on the Netherlands, because it went on for years and years, and once the EMCDDA had produced their first reports, we could show by these figures, for instance, this is about problematic hard drug users, that the Netherlands isn't doing so bad at all. I don't know whether you can see it, but it has a very low rate of problematic hard drug users compared with, for instance, Germany, France, also Sweden, who was criticizing us. And this is thanks to the input of the EMCDDA. It really had changed the debate. This is on cannabis use. The main criticism on the Netherlands was on the fact that we allowed cannabis sale. But if you look at the figures, you say we are not doing so bad at all, especially not compared with France and especially not compared with the United States, with their war on drugs going on. Third remark is that you have to be ready to stimulate innovation. You must take chances as a policymaker. You need to have the courage to do things of which you think, well, I don't know whether it will work, but give it a chance. And the drug information and monitoring system is an excellent example of this. It is a system which offers consumers, of party drugs the possibility to have their drugs who are bought illegally tested at a location. First it was at the rave parties, but later on it was, you could have it tested at 25 places in the Netherlands. I'm mentioning this system because it was also highly controversial. There was a lot of criticism on it. People criticized, said, well, you are encouraging people to buy drugs. I mean, this is bad for health, it's the wrong signal, etc. But thanks to this system, we have an excellent monitoring of the market. We have an excellent acute risk assessment system. We know immediately whether dangerous pills are on the market or not. And this is again the basis for preventive actions, meaning this is how it works, but I don't have the time to elaborate it. So this is an example of the figures we have more about more than 2,000 pills are tested each year. We know exactly the content, the quality, the price, everything. So it's an excellent monitoring mechanism. And this is just an example of all the warning campaigns we were able to start because we knew what's going on at the market. And this goes on, even these days it goes on. And it's very helpful. So the message here is dare to invest in innovations. The last example was on the debate on harm reduction, but I don't have the time here. But in fact, it's the same story. There was a lot of criticism on harm reduction, but thanks to the presentation of comparative data, almost all countries in the EU have taken over harm reduction policies. So I will finally try to summarize my experiences with monitoring and evaluation. It must be structural activities. It takes time and it takes money. You have to know that as a policymaker, but it pays off. You need political support, because sometimes it can be controversial. You need political courage, because as a politician you need to have the courage to invest in a system that can criticize your own policy. And the support of the research community is essential, because all researchers always want to protect their own data. And you have to, that is the main message, to separate the process of monitoring and evaluation from the political process. The products must be understandable. That's another issue. Don't have the time, but don't overwhelm everybody with reports. Be very precise and be short and be understandable. And the same goes for the input. It's not a challenge of collecting as many data as possible, but to limit the number of data. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I have shared with you some experiences. Coordination, monitoring, and evaluation are indispensable drug tools. It takes time, money, and political will. I have seen a fundamental change in the tone and the nature of the drug policy debate in the last 20 years, thanks to the collection and the presentation of reliable data. And finally, it's my last slide, Mr. Chairman, some suggestion for policymakers: be reliable, be realistic. Well, that's what they always have to be, I guess, but especially here in this field, because everybody knows about these data. They're on internet, so don't tell nonsense, rely on data. Invest, stimulate innovation, respect the separation of your own political will from facts, and last but not least, stimulate international cooperation between researchers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kaiser, for this excellent presentation with very clear messages. Also, as a policymaker in Slovenia, I learned something, and I will bring home your information, and I hope I will be able to use it. Now we have some time available for discussion. We heard 4 presentations by 3 speakers. I already can see few hands raised. Please use the microphones which are located in the corridors. Please, let's start with, in this side, Mr. Please.
Yalova Emniyet Müdürlüğü kadrosundan polis memuru Yılmaz Çetin. Öncelikle çok teşekkür ederim bu sunumlar ve Yeşilay Derneğimize. Benim sempozyum boyunca ve gerek literatürde olsun gerek sempozyum boyunca dikkatimi çeken bir konu oldu. Özellikle bugün yeri gelmişken değinmek istedim. Sayın Bob Kaiser Bey'in sunumunda uluslararası uyuşturucu politikalarından bahsettik. Bugün uyuşturucu politikalarında uyuşturucu madde dediğimizde genelde narkotik maddeler, bağımlılık yapıcı maddeler, psikoaktif maddeler, uyarıcı maddeler, hayal gösteren maddeler olmak üzere çok farklı deyimler kullanılmakta. Kavramsal bir karmaşadan bahsetmek istiyorum. Bunu sadece ve sadece bir uyuşturucu madde kavramı çatısı altında toplamak doğru mu? Bu konudaki görüşlerinizi almak isterim. Çok teşekkür ederim.
Yes, thank you for your question. Mr. Kaiser.
I think this is a typical scientific question. I would like to refer to Janusz or my colleague from Lithuania, because it's a matter of definition of WHO, UN, and all the others.
So that's it's really a terminological problem, and the problem which show a more broad context. Usually, the science doesn't matter. It's related to the drug issue. It is related to the chemistry or to the physics. Use the own language, which is sometimes hermetic for the audience. And in this language, all terms are clearly defined, but sometimes they are controversy. And this terminology system is always dynamic. And the second thing is are the terms used in the public debate, used by the politicians, used in the media. And they are not so strictly defined. So some people include into drugs even